It's Marilyn here in Glastonbury to tell you about something that we've done for you to help you get the most out of your sewing machine, make you feel the most comfortable and equipped to get a lot of mileage from the new machine. We've put together a series of steps, things that you have to pay attention to, things that you will become familiar with, parts of the machine, etc., threads to use, good qualities to use, the right bobbins, the right how-tos on your machine, so that you can feel more comfortable and, again, you get the most out of the machine that you possibly can. So please enjoy between the videos, the instruction manual, and the on-phone help that we can provide. You surely will have a lot of fun and enjoy sewing so much. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Jennifer from Close to Home in Glastonbury here today. I just wanted to talk about a few important things, key components of your machine. The first thing I'm going to talk about is bobbins. Bobbins are very specific to your particular machine. You always want to check your manual to make sure that you're using the proper bobbin. As you can see from our selection behind us, there are many types. They can look extremely similar and be different. So my motto on that is, if in doubt, throw it out. I myself have some bobbins at home that were in the bottom of a little container that I had, and they look exactly the same as the other ones, but I'm not positive. So if in doubt, throw them out. Those are going in the trash. I would rather replace my bobbins than my machine. Hi everyone, it's Jennifer from Close to Home in Glastonbury. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some important things about needles. There are various types of needles for different types of fabrics as well as sewing tasks. Let me show you a list of the various types of needles that are available. They are universal, embroidery needles, quilting, sharps, top stitch, stretch, leather, anti-glue, and also twin. As I mentioned, each type is used for certain fabrics, and in some cases for your particular project. We have a chart available in our stores to help you coordinate the proper needle for your specific task. Needles come in various sizes as well. They have a numbering system that helps in choosing the correct size. So if you're choosing a regular weight cotton, your choice would probably be an 80/12. If your fabric is heavier, then you would try a 90/14. Each type of needle has the various sizes. Some range from 60/8 for really lightweight fabric. If you were sewing denim material, then you would use jeans needles. We always suggest that you try the needles on your project to be sure you're getting the proper results. Domestic sewing machines use needles that have a flat back, so you insert your needle flat to the back. This is very important, as your machine will not sew properly if you do not insert it that way. Lastly, we recommend that you change your needle every 8 hours of sewing time. Thank you so much. Now go ahead and get sewing on your sewing machine. Have some fun. Hi everyone, Jennifer from Close to Home in Glastonbury here. I wanted to take a moment to talk about thread. Thread is also very important. We recommend using a very nicely wound thread as it has less lint. We carry Mettler here. It's a great quality thread. It's very nicely wound. We have polyester and silk finish cotton. Both are appropriate for home sewing. The silk finish cotton just gives you a little bit of extra sheen on your project. Give it a little extra pop. If you use a lesser quality thread, it may cause excess lint in your machine. Therefore, you have to do more maintenance. So it is very important to use a good quality, nicely wound thread.
Ron from Close to Home. My job today is to talk about the basic anatomy of the machine. In other words, what are all these knobs and little doodads? Okay? First thing we want to do is plug in our machine so we get it to work. Foot pedal, we're going to put on the floor momentarily. We're going to plug the machine in. And some machines have switches. Voila. So you can tell the light is on. So I'll put my foot pedal on the floor. Usually you put it where it's most comfortable for you, okay? Now, a little tip my wife, the expert, taught me. If you're going to use a table, the machine should be about a hand's width of your hand away from the edge of the table. Just a suggestion. If it sits inside a cabinet, then it's already set up for you. And the other tip is you want the needle sort of in the center of your face. Okay? And put your chair comfortable. Don't be leaning over or be too far away or too close. Get comfortable because you want it to be fun. You don't want to walk away with a sore back. So let's talk about the basic parts of the machine. Today's machines are all portable. Machines 40, 50 years ago were flatbeds, did not have these handles. So the handle is there for you to move it naturally or to take it with you on a trip, vacation, or classes. That's your carry handle. I'm going to move the machine a little now so we can hopefully better facilitate talking about the parts. This is your hand wheel. If you move it, you want to move it towards yourself. Okay? Now, I want you to pay attention to this little bar over here. Okay? This is called the take-up lever. Anytime you move the hand wheel, you should make sure that this take-up lever is at its highest. That prevents you from having a jam. What you do with this hand wheel is you're doing a cycle of the thread at the top and the thread at the bottom. Once you violate this status, you're going to get a jam. So hand wheel, take-up lever, highest point. Always go towards you when you turn. Okay? So these are your spool holders. You have two. You can always do twin needles. But we're only going to talk about just the basic roll. You can push them down for safety. Okay? Thread spool holder. Thread spool. This bar is your bobbin winder. You would put the bobbin on the bobbin winder, and when you're ready to go, you push this to activate the bobbin winder. It's not going to activate yet until I tell it to, but that will be in a different part of the video. So again, bobbin winder, activate. When it's all done, it stops automatically. Take your bobbin off and proceed. Now in front we have a couple of dials. This will be your stitch selector. And they're lettered. You have two rows. There's a buttonhole, regular stitches. The colored ones, red or orange, are called stretch stitches. So we'll elaborate on that momentarily. So again, you choose your stitch by the letter, corresponds with your little chart. This is going to give you a length, vary your length, okay? You can vary the length accordingly to whatever stitch you're using. Now this row of stitches, as I said, was called stretch stitches. Hence the two letters SS, stretch stitches. You can use them on any fabric, but they are built primarily for stretch materials. Older machines didn't have that capability because 40, 50, 60 years ago, we didn't have stretch materials. So today a lot of fabrics are stretchy, knits, etc. Hence, the companies have built this type of stitch. And as you operate it, which will be later on in the video, Cheryl will be showing you that, how it operates, how it accommodates for the stretchy part of the material without you having to fuss with it. We have one more knob or button, and this is your reverse. In order to activate the reverse, you simply push the lever. You must hold it down. Once you let go, it will go forward. You want it to go in reverse, hold it down. Let go, and it will stop going in reverse and now go forward. Hopefully you got all that. Now, this dial, I call it taboo. 99,999% of the time you never have to use that. There are various times when it's necessary. Without confusing you, I'll just briefly say very, very, very light fabric might need to have the tension adjusted. If your stitches aren't coming out properly, do not start playing with that. More than likely, you misthreaded it. And this will be covered later, but I'm going to take the opportunity right now to tell you so it sticks in your mind. Whenever you thread the machine, it is mandatory that that presser foot is raised. And what that does, when you raise the presser foot, there are tension discs inside the machine. Raising the presser foot opens the tension discs, so when you thread the machine, the thread gets inside the tension discs. When you drop it, the discs close. Hence, you'll have proper tension. If you thread it with the foot down, the thread will not get into tension discs. Hence, you will have a nest or all junky mess at the bottom. That's when people start to try to fix the tension, when it was really the threading that was done incorrectly. Okay? Now this little thing comes off. It's a larger sewing surface, but at the same time it's a little storage kit for your accessories, your needles, your tools, extra bobbins. You could sew with it on or off. And going back to the older machines, they were flatbeds. They never had this free arm. Okay? So this is a free arm machine for cuffs, sleeves, bags, whatever. You can sew with it on, this on, or off. Doesn't affect the machine. If I sew, which I rarely do, I would sew with the kit on, just to give us a little more surface, sewing surface. Okay? Now, this is what we call a front load system. The bobbin case is in here, as well as the bobbin. We'll elaborate on doing a bobbin shortly in another segment of the video. So, front load. If you didn't have a front load, the other option is top load. But this is a front load. You take the bobbin out, put a new bobbin in, and whenever you put it back in, you'll hear a click. That means it went all the way in. If you don't hear the click and you start to sew, you will be starting to curse and be very distressed. So make sure it clicks in tightly. Shut the door. Go back to sewing, and that's your anatomy of a mechanical sewing machine. Now I'm just going to repeat the two features that my fantastic sewing wife, whom I love dearly, taught me. Hands width, approximate hands width from the edge of the table, and have that needle be straight with your nose. I got a lot of play because I have such a wide range on my nose. So that concludes the anatomy of a machine section. After this, you will get the part showing you how to wind a bobbin and how to load the bobbin in the bobbin case. Now, in the future, when you want to upgrade, some of you might want to upgrade sooner than you think. Come back and see us. Don't be intimidated by an electronic machine. All that does is give you a lot more stitch choices, and the width and length are already set for you. You can still control them, but it makes sewing a lot more easy. You have needle up down, automatic sew, automatic buttonholes, but that's in the future. Hopefully you'll think of us at that point. Thank you and enjoy your sewing.
Hi, Mary Ann here. I'm going to wind a bobbin for us. Following Ron is going to be quite a tough act. Hang on. All right, we're going to turn our machine on to get our light. Open up to see the bobbin case. We'll remove it. And here is our empty bobbin. We are going to put our thread on the pin and follow the thread path. The bobbin gets threaded from the inside out, and we put it on the spindle. Push it towards the stopper and hold the thread up. I'm going to pull out the hand wheel to disengage the clutch and hit the pedal. And it stops when it's finished. Push it back, take it off, and we're going to cut the thread on the cutter. Okay. We're going to take our bobbin in with the case. The hook is pointed up. Put it in, and there's the slot that we slide the thread through. And it comes out. Okay. Now when you put this back in, you have to hear the click. As Ron said, if it doesn't click and you sew, you're gonna curse. All right, there we are.
Hi, it's Cheryl from Close to Home in Glastonbury, and we just saw Mary Ann wind the bobbin and insert it into the machine. So now I'm going to go through some threading technique with you. So we have our machine is on, and the most important thing that you want to do when threading your machine is make sure that your presser foot is up. Next, you want to make sure that your uptake lever is in the highest position, and you do that by turning your hand wheel towards you until it's all the way up. Okay, then I'm going to take the thread from the spool pin and I'm going to follow the thread path. So I'm going to come through number 1 down number 2, back up through my uptake lever, which is 3, back down. Okay, and then at the end I'm going to come down by my needle bar and I'm going to slip it besides there, and then I'm going to thread the needle. So if you're lucky enough, you'll have a little needle threader on your machine. So the little needle threader is a really nice little feature. If it's on your machine, it helps you thread your needle easily. If you don't have that feature, then not a big deal. You're just going to thread your needle going from the front of the needle to the back. Okay, so once you've threaded your needle, you're going to hold on to your top thread and you're going to turn your hand wheel towards you, which is going to lower the needle, and the thread's going to come around and it's going to catch that bobbin thread, and you are just going to pull up that bobbin thread right there. So just give it a pull. At that point, I'm going to stick on my bobbin cover, and I'm just going to cover my bobbin up. Then I take my 2 threads and I move them underneath my foot, and now we're ready to sew. So now that we're ready to sew, the first thing that we have to decide is what stitch we're going to use. So on our machine we have stitches A through J. So we're going to start off with letter A stitch, which is a centered straight stitch. So I come up to my selector and I make sure my selector is on A. I determine the length of my stitch. The average length of a stitch is 2.5, so I put my indicator between 2 and 3. And for this stitch to get my needle to be centered, it is going to be on 3. And you may ask me, how do I know that that is supposed to be set on 3? Because in my book, it gives me that stitch recipe that tells me to get my needle to be centered, my width has to be on 3. So let's go ahead and stitch out that stitch. So I want to make sure that my fabric is all the way under my needle when I start to sew. So fabric all the way under my needle, and I'm going to put my presser foot down. You'll notice that both my threads are underneath my foot, and then I am just going to step on my foot pedal, and I'm going to stitch that stitch out. So now I'm going to take my hand wheel and I'm going to move it towards me, and it's going to bring the needle up. And I'm going to do that until my take-up lever comes all the way to the top. Then I'm going to raise my presser foot and pull my thread to the side. And on the back of the machine there's a nice little thread cutter, and I'm just going to cut my thread. So that's a really nice looking straight stitch. So let's go ahead and stitch out a zigzag stitch. So let's just pick zigzag C. So I'm going to come to my stitch selector and I'm going to move it to C. I should tell you, make sure your needle is up when you change your stitch selector. I'm going to keep my stitch length at about 2.5 still, and I'm going to keep the width at 3. And let's stitch that and see what that looks like. So again, I'm going to make sure that my fabric is underneath my needle. And I am just going to go step on the gas now, and let's see what that stitch looks like. Again, I'm going to turn my hand wheel towards me. So my take-up lever is at the top. I'm going to lift my presser foot up and I'm going to cut my thread. So on my machine, that is what my C zigzag looks like, set at the length of 2.5 and the width of 3. But I can change the look of that zigzag. I can make it closer together and wider apart, or wider and closer. So let's go ahead and play with the length and width. So again, I'm on the C zigzag still, but this time I'm going to change the length of my stitch to 4. And I'm going to change my width to 5. And let's stitch that out and see what it looks like. Again, turning my hand wheel so my uptake lever is at the highest position, raising my presser foot, pulling my threads to the side, cutting them in the back. So you can see me changing the length and the width changes the zigzag. So depending on what you're sewing, you can adjust the zigzag to any kind of stitch that you want. Let's just try one more zigzag at C, and I'm going to totally go the other way now. I'm going to change my length to about 1.5, and I'll change my width to 1. Okay, so let's see how that stitches out. Turning my hand wheel towards me till my take-up lever is at the top, raising my presser foot, pulling my threads to the side, and cutting them. Wow, that is one tiny zigzag. It's almost not even a zigzag. So I probably would never use that stitch, but it's interesting to see how you can change it. It almost is a straight stitch, but not really. Let's change that width to a 2 and see if we can actually get it to be more of a zigzag. Now that looks way more like a zigzag. A little small zigzag, but it's definitely a zigzag. So you may notice that with the A through J, there are black stitches and there are red stitches. These red stitches are stretch stitches. Say that 10 times fast. So to get to those stretch stitches, you're going to take your length selector wheel and put it on the SS. That SS is going to allow me to select any one of those stitches with my selector dial. So let's go ahead and stitch D. So I'm changing my selector to D, my length is set at SS, and my width is going to be, I'm going to check my book to make sure to get that stitch, but I believe my width is going to be about 4. All right, so I've checked my book and it's told me that it is the width of 5. So I'm going to change my dial to 5. So again, I'm on stitch D, SS, and 5. And I found that information in my book. Turning my hand wheel towards me, so my take-up lever comes to the top, raising my presser foot, pulling my thread to the side, and cutting my thread. Oh, that's a very cute little stitch. So it's called a smocking stitch, but you could use that as a decorative stitch if you wanted to put some fancy stitching on a project that you had. So let's go ahead and stitch out another stretch stitch. So I'm going to do letter B, which is a triple stitch, but it's showing me that my needle position is going to be left. So I'm going to come up to my stitch selector and choose my AB stitch selection. My length is on SS because I want this stretch stitch. And instead of my width being on 5, which is going to put my needle in the center, I am going to change that to 0. And when I do that, you'll see my needle go to the left-hand side. So that's a great triple stitch. As you can see, it is thicker than our just plain straight stitch. It's great for a reinforcing stitch or decorative. So I'm going to go ahead and change my stitch back to a straight stitch. So I'm going to move my length button off of SS and put it back to about 2.5. I'm on stitch A. But you'll notice my needle position is still to the left, so I want to move that back into the center. So I'm going to put it between 3 and 5. You can see 3 is where it hits the center. I'll just put it on 5 to make sure that's in center. So I'm going to lower my presser foot, making sure that my needle is always on that fabric. If I was sewing something and I wanted to make sure that my stitch was secure, I can use my reverse button. So this is my reverse button right here. And I'm going to take a couple stitches, so I'll take like 3 or 4 stitches. And when I push down and hold down this big button here, my machine is going to sew in reverse. Then I can let go of it and it will move forward again. So that's very useful to secure your stitches, or let's say you've missed an area and you're just in a hurry and you want to go backwards. I just hold that button down and I can move back and forth with my machine. Lifting up my presser foot, I'm going to make sure my take-up lever is in the highest position, pull my threads and cut them in the back. You can actually see where I did all the little reverses as I was moving along. So let's go ahead and stitch another stitch. And I want to talk to you about your hand placement when you sew. So you want to guide your fabric from kind of the back of your fabric. You don't want to put your hand here and push it. You definitely don't want to take your hands and pull it through the machine. That's not good for your machine. You want to guide your fabric from the back and let your machine do the work. So you can see if I want to go right or left, I just have to turn my fabric, and I'm turning from the back. If I want to sew straight, I'm just letting that fabric be guided through the machine. Again, I'm not in the front here pulling my fabric through. I'm not holding my hand like this on the side. I'm letting my machine do the work and move that fabric through. On your plate, you have plenty of guide marks on here. So if you're sewing 5/8, if you're sewing clothing, there's a 5/8 mark because that's the size seam that you would use for clothes making. There's a 1/2 inch mark and a 3/8. If you're a quilter, you would figure out where your 1/4 inch mark is on one of these plates, and that would help you guide it. It's also marked on both sides, which is lovely. So that's the basic way that you choose your stitches on your machine. A really fun thing to do is make yourself a little stitch guide. So stitch out all the stitches of your machine. You can just take a pen and you can label what stitch this is. So this was stitch A, and had I done it from the beginning, I could have even put what length and width I had sewn with. I believe the first one was 2.5 and 3. So you can just go through and you can stitch out all the stitches on your machine. And while you're doing that, use your book and see what's recommended for the stitches when it comes to length and width. Make sure you're always using good thread in your machine. Your machine is going to do better with using high quality thread. You won't get as much lint in it. Make sure you choose the right needle for your project. If you're doing something thick, you want to make sure that you choose a heavier needle. Change your needles often. They will make a difference in your stitch quality. So that's basic stitch selection on your machine. Stitch out a stitch chart for yourself. It's a fun activity to do, and enjoy sewing.
So I hope you've enjoyed the little group of videos that our team has done. And remember, you always have your instruction book to refer to, and we're always here in case you need extra help, or you want to ask questions, or you want to come in and have us show you something else. So thank you very much. Thanks for your business, and I hope you enjoy your machine, and thank you for taking care of it.